Here are 3 exercises that will blast your belly fat, is something that you will never hear me say. But you will hear it from thousands of YouTube channels, Instagram accounts, magazine covers, and more, some of them with millions of followers and hundreds of thousands of views. Content like this make us believe that certain exercises can help us lose weight in a specific area of our body, and then make us feel like we are somehow failing when it doesn't work. If you've ever done 100 crunches to try to reduce belly fat and it didn't work, I'm happy to tell you that you are not the problem. I'm Morganne from StrongHer Collective, and today we are going to cover why targeted fat loss is a lie, how your body actually burns stored fat, and what one recent study found that complicates the picture a little, and why you should not go do 100 crunches to get a snatched waist. If you enjoy this podcast, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review, and share it with a friend. I became aware of body size when I was about 12 or 13, and throughout my teens and 20s, I was completely dissatisfied with my body, even though I was naturally conventionally thin. My mom didn't talk about body size or dieting, and I don't remember adults commenting on my body, which puts me at an advantage because research shows an increase in body dissatisfaction and eating disorders when children experience these things. However, it must have been enough to grow up in the 90s and early 2000s, where extreme thinness was promoted by the fashion industry and diet culture was normalized in everything from magazines to television and beyond. Take the TV show Boy Meets World that aired from 1993 to 2000. There's an infamous episode titled "She's Having My Baby Back Ribs," where perfectly normal-sized Topanga goes on a diet because she and everyone else in the show believes that she is fat, to the point that there are rumors that she's pregnant. Messaging like this can trigger body dissatisfaction, which leads not only to dieting, but to finding ways to fix perceived flaws. Enter exercises promoting to blast belly fat, tone arms, tone inner thighs, and melt the fat off of your hips. Fast forward 20 years, and these types of messages haven't slowed down. When preparing for this episode, I poked around on YouTube to see what was out there. YouTube is full of videos with titles like "Belly Fat Workout for Beginners" and "4 Exercises for a Flatter Stomach." Some of these creators have millions of followers. The exercises are usually things like standing knee drives, crunches, or torso rotations. I regularly have training clients ask me what exercises they should do for their belly fat, arms, or thighs. So not only is content like this widely available, people have been trained to think that certain exercises can target fat in specific areas of the body. Before we get into the science, I want to share what I found when I went down a YouTube rabbit hole using search terms like "lose belly fat for women." What I found was thousands of videos making exactly these claims. Let me walk you through a few. The first that I selected was titled "How to Get a Flatter Stomach with 4 Exercises" from a creator with 354,000 subscribers and 70,000 likes on that video. The exercises were things like standing knee drives with a twist. Will those movements work your core and improve your mobility? Sure. Will they flatten your belly? They will not. The second was a video titled "Belly Fat Workout for Beginners" and had over 1,000 views, which, if you've ever tried to grow a YouTube channel, you know is not easy, even though it's on the lower side of what you might see. The description was clearly AI generated, very generic. The exercises were B-roll footage of random people, and the voiceover was also AI. This is called a faceless channel, and it means that anyone, fitness professional or person sitting on the couch in the basement, could have made that video. And whoever they are, they reached 1,000 people with that content. I also came across a couple of chiropractors who refer to themselves as doctors, which they technically are, with millions of followers, promising things like one move to flatten or tighten your stomach, and then pivoting to sell you an intermittent fasting plan or apple cider vinegar supplements. This type of video uses the real insecurity someone has about their body and uses that insecurity to sell them something. The things that they are selling won't do anything to help, and those doctors know that. The point is not to help you, it's to get you to buy from them. These are just a few quick examples. I'm curious whether you've run into this kind of content yourself. Tell me about it by leaving a comment. If you're listening on Spotify, you can actually leave a comment right on the episode. I'd love to hear your experience with it. So, why doesn't targeted fat loss work? Let's start with a study that is considered foundational in this area, a seminal paper from the 1970s out of the University of California, Irvine. The researchers were clever about their study design. They looked at tennis players because tennis players spend their entire careers using one arm dramatically more than the other. Their racket arm is working constantly. Their non-racket arm is basically along for the ride. If targeted fat loss were real, the racket arm should have significantly less subcutaneous fat. That's the fat just under the skin that we can generally see, as opposed to visceral fat, which surrounds your organs and isn't as visible from the outside. What did the researchers find? No statistical difference in fat between the two arms. The racket arm had more muscle, yes, but it also had equal fat. That means the hypothesis didn't hold up. To understand why, we need to talk about how your body actually uses fat for energy. And I promise it's worth the brief science detour. Stored fat is not available energy. Think of it like flour sitting in your pantry. You don't want to eat flour. It's not material you can use. Your body stores fat as triglycerides inside fat cells, and before it can use that fat as fuel, it has to break it down first. When your body needs energy from fat, it breaks triglycerides down into 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol. These are released into your bloodstream. The fatty acids can be taken up fairly directly by your muscles and converted into ATP, the form of energy your body actually runs on, through a process called beta oxidation. The glycerol takes a longer route. It goes to the liver first to be converted into glucose before it's usable. Here's the key point. Because those fatty acids are released into your bloodstream, and your bloodstream goes everywhere in your body is not necessarily pulling from fat from the tissue right next to the working muscle. It can break down fat from anywhere. So when you do 50 crunches, your abdominal muscles are certainly working and they may need energy. But if your body needs fat as fuel when you are doing these crunches, and that's also a big if, because energy and metabolism are complicated and there are other places your body gets energy besides body fat, the fat fueling that work doesn't necessarily have to come from your belly. It comes from wherever your body decides to pull it from. And as far as we know, you can't control that. And that's what was shown with those tennis players. Using their racket arm didn't mean they were taking fat from their arm. But wait, there is one study that I found that found something different. I want to be honest with you because this is where it gets a little more complicated. I found a 2023 study that actually did find a statistically significant difference in trunk fat between groups. And I think it's worth discussing because this is exactly the kind of research that gets misrepresented online. So first, it's important to note what statistically significant means in research. It does not mean a large or dramatic difference. When we use the word significant colloquially, often it sounds like it's a really big difference. In research, statistical significance simply means the difference found was unlikely to be due to chance. It can be a very small difference and still be statistically significant. So just keep that in mind now and whenever you're trying to interpret research. Here's the study design. They took 16 overweight adult men. Their average age was 43, and they were randomly assigned to 2 groups for 10 weeks, 4 exercise sessions per week. The first group, we're going to call it the abdominal group, did 27 minutes on the treadmill at about 70% of their max heart rate, followed by 4 4-minute intervals of crunches and torso rotations on a machine. Their total session lasted 57 minutes. And again, they're doing this 4 times a week. The second group, this was the control group, did a 45-minute treadmill session at the same intensity. Here's what makes this study design fairly solid. The researchers did pilot testing ahead of time to make sure both protocols, the abdominal group and the control group, would burn the same number of calories in their exercise sessions. They monitored oxygen consumption to confirm that this was happening. So the difference between groups wasn't going to be because of calories burned. Theoretically, it was going to be what types of exercises they were doing with these calories. So with the results, the abdominal group lost about 3% of their trunk fat, while the control group had no meaningful change in trunk fat. Both groups lost a similar amount of total body weight and fat overall. The researchers concluded that with this specific protocol and this specific population, some degree of spot reduction may be occurring. So does that mean you should be doing 100 crunches a day to lose belly fat? Slow down. We can't draw conclusions yet. The study design is decent. The calorie matching is methodologically solid. And using DEXA scanning to measure body composition changes is one of the more accurate tools available. But there are also big limitations here. The first limitation we need to consider is the sample size. There were 16 people in this study, 8 per group. In research, smaller sample sizes introduce more statistical error and make it harder to see real trends. And when researchers are measuring to determine significance, they are using statistics. That's the kind of math that they use to make sense of all of the group's measurements and data. The second limitation is that diet was not controlled, and this is a very big flaw. Participants were told not to change their eating habits, but that wasn't verified. And with only 8 people per group, one person making a dietary change during the study could meaningfully shift results. And sometimes people make changes without even realizing it. They could know that they're in a scientific research study, which they absolutely did because they would have volunteered and also signed paperwork for this. And they could subconsciously be reaching for healthier choices. The authors also didn't discuss whether they evaluated participants' diets ahead of time to confirm that participants were eating similar types of food or that their diet was staying somewhat consistent. When looking at fat loss, not controlling diet is a huge gap. The third limitation is that this study was conducted entirely with middle-aged men who had overweight BMIs. We have no idea whether these findings would hold for women, for younger people, for people at different fitness levels, or for people with different body compositions. For me to feel confident saying targeted fat loss works or this type of exercise protocol will help you lose trunk fat, I need to see this replicated, first with the same population, then with much larger groups, and then with diverse populations, women at various life stages, people of different ages, different fitness backgrounds, different races. My personal belief is that replication would not be possible because I think the results are more likely due to chance because of the small sample size. And when we are looking at fat loss, it seems pointless if energy intake is not controlled for. I also think that if the results of this study were consistent with how our physiology works, we would all be easily blasting belly fat with abdominal exercises. And that's just not what I'm seeing every day as a fitness professional. And this is exactly the kind of study an influencer or YouTube doctor will cite without mentioning any of that context. Research shows crunches reduce belly fat. Buy my program. That's not science, that's just marketing. So what does work if changing body composition or reducing fat is a goal? What I always come back to, and I know it's not as exciting as flatten your belly in 10 days, is the boring basics. And the boring basics really work. Build and maintain muscle through resistance training. If fat loss is a goal, having a healthy amount of muscle will support your metabolism, not to mention all of the amazing health benefits of muscle. Support a modest calorie deficit with adequate protein and fiber. Add in cardio, whether that's steady state or high intensity interval training to increase your total energy expenditure and to support a healthy cardiorespiratory system. Increase movement throughout the day and be consistent over time. I also want to say this. I prefer to think about fitness in an additive way. What can we build? What can we get stronger at? Focusing on what your body can do rather than shrinking a specific part of it is what supports long-term health, both physical and mental. Spot reduction as a primary strategy is not well supported by the evidence. Strength, consistency, and solid nutrition, that's where the picture really starts to come together. And that's it for today. I hope this gives you a clearer picture of what's actually happening when you see those blast your belly fat videos and the tools for you to think critically about the research behind bold fitness claims. If you have questions about women's strength and fitness, send me a DM on Instagram. I'm at StrongHer.collective. That's StrongHer.collective. Please follow the show wherever you're listening. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, a rating or review goes a long way towards helping more women find this content. Any interaction with the show signals the algorithm to share it further, and I appreciate your help with that. Thanks so much for being here. Let's get stronger together.